Remember last year when Taylor Swift and Beyonce generated almost $10 billion for the economy? I know what you're thinking. $10 billion. What is that? What's that? Like 3 cartons of eggs? I know. Inflation is crazy. But it wasn't too long ago that these two women helped turn the American economy around. You know why? Because women have money to spend and invest, and not just on life-changing concerts, which of course they both were, but on homes and investments and businesses too, which is why I have some serious choice words for business ghouls who have for too long tried to exclude women from starting businesses and participating fully as equals in this space. Over the past few decades, women-owned businesses have grown twice as fast as the national average, and women own almost half of small businesses, and yet women are getting only 16% of commercial loans from traditional banks and under 6% of the total dollars lent. It's not a glass ceiling, it's a glass ATM. Well, I mean, it is also a glass ceiling. You get it. The whole thing's made out of glass. This is Choice Words. I'm Samantha Bee. My guest today is a true force of nature and a real doer, Sophia Bush. She has her hands in so many buckets, but one is the First Women's Bank. First Women's Bank. Shockingly, the only bank in the country with a strategic focus on supporting the women's economy and closing the gender lending gap, which is huge. Plus, I also wanted to mention, ever so casually, that I am hitting the road soon with my new show, How to Survive Menopause, and hopefully I'm coming to a city near you. For the full list of cities and tickets, visit samby.com and follow my social media at @RealSamby. I hope to see you soon. And until then, take a listen and make good choices.
Okay. You and I, we've met. I like you so much at heart.
I like you so much, Sam.
Oh my God. I'm so goddamn excited to talk to you. And we've already taken it to 13 out of 10 in the pre-chat.
I think because the last 30 days have felt like a washing machine, sort of laundering the worst traumas of the earth in the last 100 years.
Yes.
It feels appropriate. I think we just have to kind of dial it up.
I think that's one of the best analogies I've heard.
Thank
laundry
you.
machine, just like churning up the worst things that human beings have ever done.
Yeah, we're back.
We're back. We're going hardcore. We're undoing all the things we thought were nice.
We're undoing so many things.
Yes.
It feels like, that old adage, you've cut off your nose to spite your face.
Right.
I'm kind of like, do y'all know why you can drink the water that comes out of your faucet or drive on a road or the stoplights work or like we can breathe the air most days? I don't know.
It's just like we had these.
We had some protections, but I guess the broligarchs weren't satisfied with their fleet of yachts. They want more yachts in the fleet. And so the rest of us can't breathe or the kids can't have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich at lunch, God forbid.
Yeah, they want to go create environments for themselves where the rest of us aren't allowed at all. They just want to fully separate whatever it takes, like a little enclave outside San Francisco, whatever it is, whatever version of the future, we're not invited to the party.
Definitely.
At all. It's longevity and all kinds of bullshit and
yeah. Well, when the men do it, it's called longevity. When we do it, it's vanity.
Yeah.
But it really does feel like a group of them took too much ketamine and watched the Hunger Games and were like, that could be fun for us, not to play in, but to watch.
Yeah.
And now they're sort of making the plans, and it's weird.
It's really weird. I wish that a whole bunch of them would do a lot more ketamine in a space away from me and just be amused by that forevermore.
Totally. That's my thing. Just go do the drugs you like to do away from the rest of us, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
You've got it
buy
all.
yourself an island. Greenland is not for sale.
Nope.
Bears repeating. But like some other island and just go.
Yeah. You don't have to dirty yourself with our filth and our problems.
You can ignore the peasants. We will stay here and figure out how to feed the kids. Like you said you would that time for $6 billion. And then you said, psych, after you got all the good press. And then you spent $44 billion to buy Twitter and turn it into a Nazi message board.
Yeah.
Even all that aside, like just go. And we'll figure out how to feed the kids without your $6 or $44 billion.
Yeah.
We'll figure it out.
I feel like we've all, I don't even know where to put my angst, actually. It's like too severe. Thinking about like paying into Social Security for all those years and everybody thinking that they were doing the right thing and people being conservative about their life savings and the nut that they've created for their family and just trying to like live a nice regular life where you're just like, I put things in place and when I turn 67, I'm going to travel a little bit and I want to go on safari with my family and do all fun stuff. And it's like all the things that you did that you were told that were correct and would build a future for subsequent generations, whatever version of that you think is possible. And now you're just going to let a bunch of kids and a big idiot fuck around with all of that. You're just going to let them like tinker and nobody's going to stop. Nobody can stop it because we've never actually had rules that mean anything.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do.
I don't either. And what strikes me about what you're saying, like being alive is a community project.
Yes.
If you don't want to be in a community and you want to be like the guy who lives at the top of that pass going from Telluride to like Ute and he lives alone and in the winter he has no heat and he likes it that way and he doesn't have to talk to anybody. Okay, cool. But if you don't want to be part of the community project, what are you doing talking about these community spaces? Like to live in a country is to be part of something. The whole idea is that we built a society so we could prosper, sure, but also so we could be protected, strength in numbers, right? And what shocks me about these people who want to burn it all down, they don't want to burn it all down because we're not taking care of enough people, which, let's be honest, is true. They want to burn it all down because we're taking care of anybody.
We're here to talk about you. We needed to get that.
We just needed a little vent.
We needed a tiny vent because we're like literally 3 or 4 weeks into this administration. And actually, I don't know what it's going to take in terms of endurance. And I have several theories about Donald Trump and this administration, and I want to tell you one of them and see if you can agree. And
Is one of them that there's 4 little gremlins in a trench coat wearing his head? Is that one of them? Because I think about that a lot.
Essentially. It's basically the same thing. I think that he goes to bed and dreams weird dreams. I think he drinks a Diet Coke and eats meat right before bed and then has like crazy dreams where he's like, I think I'm the boss of Canada. And then he wakes up and then he says that. And because he's the president, he gets to like actually say it. And then people go, well, sir, how can we make that happen? Instead of just going like, you old idiot, your dreams are weird. We don't want to hear about your dreams anymore, Papa. Stop it. His hallucinogenic dreams are just going to be our reality. And I think, I am going to step down from my soapbox shortly. I think that we cannot even imagine how bad it's going to get because our imaginations would never concoct the scenarios that we're about to face.
I agree. So here we go.
Anyways.
How are you doing?
Choice words.
Can I ask you something? Because you are one of the people who I'm like, I feel like I'm losing my mind. What does Sam Bee think? Like, what's she going to say on her show or her pod or, all the avenues? How are you taking care of yourself? right
Well,
now? Like, are you stopping? Are you forcing yourself to do anything?
let me tell you something. This is the God's honest truth, and you're asking this question on the exact correct day. Because
Really?
yesterday, I basically went to see a witch doctor. And she...
Tell me everything. Can I come? When do we go back?
Have to. I went to see someone yesterday because I I'm 55. I have all kinds of like perimenopausal stuff going on in my body. And I'm kind of like, I've kind of regulated it all. And it's actually in a pretty good place, except that I had frozen shoulder for years and really had to work. I've worked so hard to just like make it better. And then I noticed recently it's going into the other shoulder. The body's trying to balance it out so I was like, I can't do this again. And so I went to see someone to do this, like something with my fascia. She was like, oh, I'll get this checked. She was like, I'll fix this in 3 sessions. And I was like, that's nice try. I've been with this for years. And she was like, no, you've never done this before. And it was totally painless and incredible. And it took 45 minutes and I was reborn. But tell me about how are you taking care? What do you do?
Haven't been. It's been terrible. I think I have that like chronically overachieving only daughter syndrome where like I have to take care of every generation of the family.
Oh my God.
And
Yes.
then I do that with the world. And then I wake up and I'm like, oh my God, why does everything hurt? And why, even though I got 7 hours of sleep, do I feel like I ran a marathon last night? Like I'm realizing it's not the amount of stress and the impending doom and the unfortunate nature. I've never, there's this weird thing where people are like, oh, progressives are so entitled. Oh, they think they know everything. Oh, no. I don't want to be an I told you so person. I want to be a come over and pop a bottle of wine in the backyard and let's talk at sunset, hang out. I want to go to comedy shows. That's what I want to do. Yes. I don't want to be this person who is like, I told you so. And not only did I tell you so, every fucking historian in the world who comes from academia said, this is the playbook. We've seen it before. Yeah. Like, I don't want to be right about this shit. Yeah. So I've realized that the like sadness of all of it weighs on me in a way that is like I'm seeing like the physical side effects. Right. And I'm also realizing I'm starting to say like a lot. I think my brain is short circuiting. And I'm starting to try to do small things. Okay. I realize I tend to set a large goal, like saving democracy, or believing in science. And sometimes I make this goal of, I'm going to go to bed at this time. I'm going to regulate my sleep. I'm going to take these 5 vitamins. I'm going to do this kind of walk. It's too much. Right. So for the last week, I have said to myself, no phone for 1 hour after you wake up. Great. And I've done it 51% of the days. Great. So far. That's good. And if next week I do it 77% of the days, we're going to be on to something. And I'm trying to give myself one goal at a time so that I don't overpromise myself into failure. I think this is so smart.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Luckily for you, there's Indeed. When it comes to hiring, Indeed is all you need. Don't rely on other job sites where you hope your listing is at the top of the page or the right person sees it. Indeed's sponsored jobs help you stand out and hire fast. With sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates so you can reach the people you want faster, and it makes a huge difference. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. I've worked on many different creative projects with writers' rooms and full staffs, and I'll tell you, having the wrong person in the wrong place is a lot costlier than people realize. That's why making sure you find the right person with the right posting can save everyone time and emotional energy, and that's what Indeed can do for your next hire. There's no need to wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/Samby. Just go to Indeed.com/Samby right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Indeed.com/Samby. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Sometimes I do think about how much of our psychic space we have given. We have just handed it away like it was nothing, but it's everything.
Yeah.
Every effort that we make to unwind that, even if it's something small, even if it's just taking back 1 hour of your private time and space, is very much moving toward greatness. I have 3 kids, all teenagers, and now I used to like nag them a lot about being on their phones all the time,
Yeah.
Like, I'm like, why are you wasting your time on TikTok? And now the conversation is totally different in our house. I'm like, why are you giving these men all your time and power? Why are you letting them feed off of you? Why are you just giving it to them? Because they're getting more from you than you're getting from them. They're draining your life force, and you're just letting them do it. It doesn't quite work. They don't quite see it. But like, I think if that's how I'm really feeling.
Yeah.
Why do we keep giving it to them? All of our privacy, all of our data. I'm like, you can't have it anymore. You can't have it.
I think just figuring out how to, like you were talking about with your body.
Yeah.
It's like a chiropractic adjustment. You got to realign the spine a little bit. We're so out of whack with how much we look out versus spend time in. And on the one hand, I like being informed. I like being able to translate, policy and make it personal for people. I like being able to do comms in that way. My literal job is to be a communicator.
Yeah.
And I can't do 4 hours a day of the news anymore. I just can't do it. And so I'm beginning to try to set different boundaries with my time,
Right.
so that I can also be a human. And I'm trying to do one break, even online, a day.
Good.
If I do a ton of content so people know the crazy things that happened this week, then I'm like, I went on an art walk. Want to see?
Right.
Because I had to get out of the house for my mental health, and I want to help you get out of the house on the internet, my people.
Yes. You do there is so much that you do. You do so much. I actually think that you are remarkable, like the amount of energy that you have around great things. And you have a relatively new relationship. Like, you're in such a place of productivity and like forward motion. You do need that for yourself. It's like, well, I have to cultivate, sow the seeds in your own relationships. Like, that's all part of it.
Totally.
It's just like happiness. I don't know.
Yeah. Happiness, I think, is a big thing. I think it recalibrates, at least for me, the adjustment, to go with the spinal metaphor.
Yes.
Clicking into something that felt right. The opposite of the freeze, the opposite of pretzeling yourself to try to fit everybody else's stuff.
Yeah.
Being in like an alignment, being able to take a deep breath finally. I went, oh, I don't have the desire to be out and catching and holding and supporting and all of the things at 100 anymore, because I have so much more desire to be in my own life, in my own space, with my own family. And it doesn't mean I'm less committed to the community project. It just means I'm not giving all of it away every day.
I think that's so smart.
It's a big shift. And I would imagine for you, I mean, my partner has young kids.
Okay. How young? What ages are they?
4 and 2.
Oh.
Yeah.
So cute.
And they're just the coolest. They're the coolest little humans in the world.
Yeah.
And I've been really lucky. I grew up my first jobs were always watching other people's children. And then I was a camp counselor, and then I watched lots of children, which now looking back, I'm like, who lets a 17-year-old be in charge? Whatever. We had a great time.
Yep.
But and then I think about, my friends who had kids young and these amazing people they're growing into. And then this sort of wave around me of people who have young kids, my partner and my best friends. And for me, it has always been a no-brainer. We have to design a future for our children, our community children.
Yes.
And the double down of that, now that it's so intimately personal, not just with, my godchildren or the children in my, chosen family, but these kids that I'm like, oh yeah, I absolutely get now why moms talk about how they could pick up a vehicle if they had to. Like if the incredible desire to, protect. This is why I think the women need to be in charge.
Oh.
I'm like, if the moms were just in charge, the whole government would be different. The budget would be balanced.
Oh.
We would have extra snacks and everybody would be good.
Yeah. Everybody's getting 3 square meals. Like priority number 1. Because
100%.
everybody loses it when they're hungry. You got to feed people. First of all, let's keep the snacks going.
Yeah. Proactivity in that realm, first and foremost. But yeah, it's like, I don't know. There's really something profound about loving your life and your people.
Boy, I read your absolutely beautiful essay.
Oh.
I don't know if it was last year. It was like the year. Was it last year that you put it out? It was
last year, yeah.
About realizing that you made the wrong decision when you married your now ex-husband.
Yeah.
And how you kind of knew before the wedding and thought about calling it off. But can you talk about making that choice? Like, I mean, you so eloquently describe how, people in the public felt like they had ownership over your choice, but you spent so long deliberating and agonizing. What was that like for you?
I think this happens, certainly to people in the public eye at an imbalanced rate. It's frozen shoulder instead of aligned spine. I sometimes I try to remind people, like just on Instagram, I'm like, guys, there's one of me here on this little page, and there's 4.5 million of you. If you could handle being critiqued by 4.5 million people a day, let me know how you figure that out.
Yeah, let's switch places.
We're all just human. And what I think is really interesting is there's a lot of stuff that's hard for all of us. Knowing whether something is normal and you're experiencing the regular requirement of a good person to figure out how to compromise with the people in your life. Because again, we're not fans of dictators here, clearly. So I think compromise is important. But how do you know when compromise shifts into a demand for you to compromise yourself?
Right.
How do you know when making space for someone else shifts into the scary zone of you have to be smaller so someone else can feel bigger than you?
Oh.
These are the nuances. These are, I think, the complexities of humanity that particularly don't translate well in 2D on Instagram or Twitter or whatever. And yet, so many people live on their phones and we're expected to be accessible all the time. And our lives get flattened. And then when we're having these very 3-dimensional experiences, we don't know what they mean.
Right.
And I think for me, the sort of incredible place I find myself in, having to make this choice, essentially having to tear down my own house that I spent my whole adult life building, it allowed me to have conversations with my family and understand generational trauma that I hadn't understood before. It allowed me to see decisions I made as a kid in reaction to things happening in my family that seemed very evolved. And, you go to therapy and they say, oh, you were a parentified child. Okay, sure. But when a child makes a decision to not carry a pattern from their house into adulthood and then never looks at it again, if you don't know where the pattern comes from, it's pretty likely you're going to repeat the pattern and not even know it because
Right.
you're going to find the claws that fit your wounds.
Right.
It's just what we do. So like that was a big aha moment for me. I had to really come to terms with the fact that when I was very young and I was in a very terrible situation, which was the first year I was a quote public figure, even though I was part of a group of people that were victimized by a circumstance, I get asked about the circumstance and the person who should be asked about it never is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had to come to terms with the fact that I had pushed back on public interest in my life for 20 years and then sort of felt like, well, if there's so much of it and there's so much hunger for it, at least I can control it.
Right.
And I'm making this decision and at least it can be my narrative and I can own it and I can be the adult person that I am. And if for some stupid reason, it's more important to the internet to talk about someone's relationship rather than their volunteerism, activism, schools they've built, money they've raised, people they work with, the academics that they've collected over their lives. Okay, I can pretzel myself to do this well. And then there's the thing underneath it, like the whole publicness I had to come to terms with. And then I had to look underneath and say, oh, I've grown up in a society that judges ambitious women.
Yes.
We treat ambition like it's a dirty word.
Mm-hmm.
I want to be of service. I am honored to work on campaigns, whether they be in my local school boards or for a president of the United States. I am honored to stand up and advocate for our rights and our healthcare and our autonomy and our equality. I am thrilled to have spent 20 years pushing for the ratification of the ERA. Like, these are things I'm not ashamed of. This is my calling.
Yeah.
And yet, I had to sit and think, oh, for how many years have I internalized the messaging? Well, it's hard for a man to be with a girl like you. You're so intimidating.
Mm.
Your career is really a lot for someone. I also got a lot of, no, you're not really queer. Girls just experiment more than boys do.
Right.
You're not. So all these messages and all this stuff, it was like I designed my house on Pinterest and then I built it and then there was mold on the walls.
Right.
It's kind of what it felt like.
Right.
I built this perfect life. And once the project was done, I sat in a house and I realized, oh, I'm the project in this relationship.
Mm.
I don't want to be the project. Now that there isn't an event or a nonprofit to launch or a whatever,
Mm-hmm.
we can't just hang out. I didn't even realize in this big dream that I built that I was still making myself so small.
This is incredible. What you're saying is so resonant. It's like, it's all beautiful and it's super interesting. And the real nut of it is like, you can't be with someone who makes you smaller than you are.
No, you cannot. You deserve to take up all of your own spherical, three-dimensional space, but also, why does the world desire to flatten people and judge the paper doll?
Yeah.
Instead of make space for other people to be human.
I know.
So that maybe their humanity can show you your own.
Yes.
Like, we can mirror each other and support each other and live by example for each other in our flaws and in our courage and in our sadness. And it's a weird world where we continue to see this flat cruelty. And I think that's why I feel so allergic to the administration. I felt allergic to it last time, but let's be clear, I was still shrinking myself in the last version of this, in V1 of the nightmare.
Yeah.
And the more healed I feel, the more whole I feel, the more space I make for myself, the more I see you as a whole person, my friends as these whole people, the more this kind of ugly flattening, even in the political realm, hurts.
Yes.
Because I know it's killing us.
Yeah.
I know in my own house, it almost killed me. I know in the world, it's hurting people. And so I think when, people wonder, like, how do you cope with the public or whatever? I was quiet for a really long time. And then I wrote the most vulnerable thing I could in the gentlest way I could. And I still try to be very gentle because there's a whole bunch of things my friends know.
Right.
That I could say in the world that would cause like rage and pitchforks and things. And I, maybe if I were younger, would want to do that to some people. Mm-hmm. And I just don't see the point.
Right.
Because it's already done. It already happened. Mm-hmm. It doesn't deserve any more oxygen.
Yes. And that's such an individual, that's just like a decision that you can hold, and you can feel that way forever, or you can change your mind about it, but you get to decide, like you get to say, it's your story. These are your stories to tell. No one can tell them for you. You must have felt so vulnerable writing that, like, because you want to get it exactly right. And you're speaking to a large audience. You know, people feel they have some kind of say in your life. Everybody's got opinions.
Oh, yeah.
But I encourage everyone who's listening to this right now to read it, because I think I love the articulation of those it's like raw. I love that. I need that. I like to hear about imperfection and struggle, like real consideration and like stakes. It's important. Mm-hmm. There's a real, I don't know if you feel this. I'm sure that you do, actually. I'm pretty sure you're going to agree. But there is this sense that if you're famous or you have a big following, people know you from something, that they don't really want to hear the struggle part. They're like, nobody ever wants to hear when you have imposter syndrome.
Right.
They're just like, that's not true. That's not real. That's what I feel, not you.
Yeah.
And you're like, no, literally everyone has it.
Yeah.
Everyone. Maybe not some men.
Maybe not some men who should.
Some men should have more of it.
But,
a few of them should have a little more. But we're just human beings. Everyone's just human.
At the root of that fallacy that anyone who looks successful on the outside feels amazing at all times or has it easy on the inside, at the root of that, I think, is a really toxic little seed. Mm-hmm. And it's the us versus them.
Yeah.
The reason for any of that is to separate.
Yeah.
It's to dehumanize. It's why the man who occupies the Oval Office at Current, who flies around the country on a plane with his name on it, calls people like us the elite. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, bro, I only have healthcare because I'm a union worker.
Yeah.
You have a gold toilet and a jet with your name on it. Like, what are we talking about? I work in an industry. I feel so lucky to be part of it, but it's mostly construction workers and camera guys and drivers. Like we're a bunch of unions thrown in a bag, and we make a circus, and sometimes we feast, and very often we famine, and that's what it is. And we love it, but we're not like any of those people that make up the actual global elite.
We're not trying to make the rules for everybody else.
No.
We're just the clown car. We're trying to tell stories over
we
here.
Also
like, give me
don't
a break.
Have yachts. Like, it's not the same thing. And I think the insidiousness of trying to make some people seem, quote, out of touch is to dehumanize them. It's to make their voices less powerful. It's to make the ways in which they advocate for our sameness seem silly. Yeah. And it's a neat kind of hat trick that they're managing to do right now. And it's part of why, as hard as it is to be raw in front of such a large set of eyeballs, I think it's so fucking important, because I think it's the only way we don't lose our humanity.
I agree. Isn't that so funny to think of just like performers and public personas as being elites, when literally 300 years ago, we were like the literal scum. We were like, oh, you're a toilet person. You want to stand on a stage? You pig. Let's go see those dirty birds do a play. Ew.
Yeah. They're like court jester dance for me, and maybe I won't cut off your head.
You disgusting monsters. Do a Shakespeare play for us.
Yeah, you literally sing for your supper. You're like, please feed me. Did I make you giggle? May I have some porridge?
Please, I'll eat it from my hands.
Yeah, it's wild.
I don't even know. I don't even know where to begin with this. But what is the project that is close to your heart that you are right in it right now?
Gosh, there's things that are in development that that exist in the sort of traditional career space, like a TV show with a gaggle of old best friends. There's a docu-series my best girlfriend and I are working on. There's a show I'm noodling around on with a writer who I adore. Like there's things that feel exciting because I think I took a breath, and I think I have a lot of stories I want to be a part of telling right now. And that feels really cool because there was a minute where I was like, I don't know about this. I think I need a beat. And the beat was helpful. There's also, I think, a really neat thing. I talk about her a lot, but we really do everything together. My best friend who, we had these parallel path splits. She and I, whether it's life, love, parenthood, whatever, we managed to do all of the things together all of the time. Yeah. Which is why her dad calls me his bonus daughter. I've always called him my bonus dad. Sometimes he walks into our office and he's just like, you two.
How long?
After 20 years, you two.
Yeah. How long? How did you meet?
We met not long after college at a conference, before conferences were like fancy and cool with gift bag tables and shit. Like we were going to these places and meeting with world leaders and climate scientists and trying to figure out what our generation was going to do to fix some of our parents' problems. And we left a session with this incredible oceanographer one day, and walking out, she goes, I don't know why the girl from TV's here taking notes like a court stenographer. And I think she was starting to say, but I need a copy of those. And I was like, do you need a copy? My notes are very good. I went to journalism school. And she was like, yeah. I was late. I was in a meeting. And we've been best friends ever since.
That's great.
And, we've worked on media projects. We've worked on desegregating the beauty space. We've worked on, life and love and all the things. And
are you partners? Are you partners on the, because I was on the website
in the fund.
In the fund and in the Feeding Postpartum Women.
Yes.
That initiative.
That's one of our investments that we're so proud of.
Goodness.
So Nia and I were, young women working in media. I found out when I copied my notes for her that she was at the time the youngest ever executive at what was Viacom, which is now Paramount Global, and by the way, did this as a woman, did this as a Black woman. I was like, you're so cool. She was like, yeah, it's really funny when I walk into a meeting and people ask like when I'm going to be there because they think I'm my own assistant. And she was like, I'm always the first person at the meeting. Die for her. Like, she's just perfect. Through me being on my first show and then into the next one and her being at, this enormous company and really focusing on corporate partnerships and, where they invested in and what they invested in and why, we started doing little angel investing stuff together. Yeah. To be clear, we weren't in the world of like an Ashton Kutcher who was making crazy money and could write a 6-figure check. We'd scrape together between us like $10,000 at the end of a fiscal year and get the smallest available opportunity on a cap table for something we thought was really cool, for something we believed in. And we started to realize we were often the only women in the room with our friends who were doing these companies and launching these initiatives and, who founded Warby Parker to fix a problem and then it became the biggest eyewear brand, or who said, cars are really expensive to get anywhere. And then they started Uber. They were solving problems and we realized they were often solving them without the input of women. And over the years that we were on the fringes, but still in the room, it was really her dad who said, there aren't allocators like you ladies. And there's a reason why all these people tell you to get more involved, why they tell you you should run a fund.
Right.
If instead of being angel investors, but you actually become fund managers. You decide when there's a new cancer drug being tested, if it focuses on something where there's already 5 drugs at market, or if it focuses on ovarian cancer where there are currently 0.
Right.
You shift how these companies innovate and move and work. And it has been the most, difficult and also easy commitment I've ever made, is to really begin to take up space in this world that we often don't have a window in, we often don't see into.
I think this is so fascinating. These are the reasons why we have we have just so many like erectile dysfunction medications and nothing for ovarian cancer, or like very few options if you're perimenopausal, and we haven't studied endometriosis to anyone's satisfaction, and we don't, because there just aren't women in those spaces. Typically.
Exactly. It's just been really fascinating to work on. And for us, it really coincided with the pandemic exploding in the country, having to very sadly shutter this beautiful business we'd built together in Detroit, which was this very inclusive, non-toxic salon. Where women of every race and hair type could come and be together and could know they would have safe and expert treatment. We really became this kind of hang spot in the community. And when the guys started coming in, for cuts and washes and getting their braids out and deep conditioning, we were like, oh man, we're doing the thing we wanted. We had record players and a bar, and it was really a vibe for us. And it turns out that, running hot hair dryers during a respiratory pandemic is basically the most dangerous thing you can do.
Okay, perfect.
And perfect, yeah. And like so many small businesses, we had to pivot. And it was hard to sunset a business in the same year that in our plans, we would get to the end of having done a raise to go national and to take this democratized space around the country. But we had to make that choice. And it was at the same time that was happening that we were asked to join the strategic advisory board of the First Women's Bank, which is with all the women who ran the SBA under President Obama, and the incredible, incomparable Billie Jean King, who's worked on, equity for us in terms of our money for so long. And as we sat on these meetings on Zoom with these women talking about shifting the financial landscape for women, about how in the year 2020, there still was not one financial institution dedicated to supporting us and our needs in America, even though women, and particularly women of color, are the largest small business creators in the country. We clearly need to fix this. And as we're working on this, and we're dealing with the salon, and we're looking at some of these things we'd been doing as partners that then, Nia's dad had started joining us on as an advisor. He was like, what are you doing? Just do the thing. Launch the fund. Run the business. And we started working on a thesis, and we spent 2 years in our community looking at the landscape in Detroit, looking at the landscape in Michigan, looking at the then national, federal landscape of how the institutions of finance work. And we just decided to do something really expert in a different way than a lot of other people do it. And the last 2 years have been the most rewarding of my life in terms of feeling like a calling, and the work around it are aligning so beautifully.
This is a calling. This really is a calling. To become expert in something that is traditionally so closed off. You must be learning things on a daily basis that you're like, my head is exploding. I wish more people.
All the time. But that's what's fun for me is like the same things that got me out on my first campaign at the end of 2007, talking to people about what our potential is again in community. I get to talk about, if we invest in this, look what happens. You want to talk about, babies, you want to talk about families, look at these things we can invest in, look at what happens. Look at how we can shift what's available in medical tech and biotech and artificial intelligence. Look at, like, for a person with deep ADHD, but who also is such a proud book nerd for my whole life.
Right.
My whole job is like reading white papers and becoming an expert on not one thing, but 40 things that I'm fascinated on. It's my dream come true.
Oh my God. I think it's amazing. I can't even imagine, like, what I'm picturing in my head is the biggest whiteboard in the world in your office that is covered in Post-it notes and all different, like, do you wake up in the night?
You know?
Literally, do you wake up in the night and go, I have another idea? And you just write it down.
Like, I just moved something out of my office, and this is this week's stack of Post-its.
Yeah.
Like,
look at you.
I'm obsessed, and it's the way my brain works. I have Post-its everywhere, and then I have different colored Post-its for different things.
This is the language. This is my Post-its are my love language.
No, they're mine.
Like, there's nothing like a list and a Post-it. I interviewed Amy Klobuchar recently, and we were like, we were basically like, how do you unwind? Like, you're doing so much. You're about to do like 30 hours of like constant protest. Like, how do you sort your brain? Yeah. And she was like, I go to the Container Store and I shop for tiny boxes, and then I come home and I put like an individual earring in a tiny box, and then I just stack all the boxes. And I was like, we're all just playing Tetris.
My kind of gal.
Oh, I love it so much. You know what? I want to give you the biggest do something award that is physically possible to give, because you are a doer.
I am a trier. I don't always succeed, but I do really make the effort.
That is what this world needs. This is how we sort ourselves. This is how we stay together for this long haul.
I hope so.
Oh my God, I hope so too.
Should we just go to 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue with our P touches? And just label, like, we could just print out tiny copies of the law and just stick them to every part of the fence and be like, hey, just FYI, this is what this is the law. Not that you care, but maybe you should.
I want to go and put all the library books back that they took out. I was just reading, like, I want to put Freckle-Faced Strawberry back in the libraries that the Department of Defense has banned.
Yes. I was just about to say, tell me why the Department of Defense is threatened by Freckle-Faced Strawberry.
Freckle-Faced Strawberry. What nefarious messages are you getting from this beautiful book about a girl coming to terms with her freckles?
Samantha,
come on.
You know girls aren't allowed to like themselves.
We are not allowed, nor should we. Keep it small. We should all fit ourselves into tiny boxes from the Container Store.
You get back into that little pretzel, and I'm going to put your little pretzel in a little Container Store box.
I'm going to refreeze my shoulders, and I'm going to twist myself into a little knot and put myself in it.
That is what they want for you.
They do. Boy, they do.
But we resist.
Unfurl our wings and fly. My God, thank you so much for this.
Thank you. You're such a dream bug.
Light.
That was Sophia Bush, and I had no choice but to look up one thing. She talked about how it feels like Republicans sometimes are cutting off their nose to spite their face, and it is so true. But where does that phrase even come from? Well, turns out people have been saying it since the 1700s, which makes sense because it does feel like we are back in the 1700s most of the time. Thanks for joining us. I'm Samantha Bee. See you next week for some more choice words.
Thank you for listening to Choice Words, which was created by and is hosted by me. The show is produced by Svea Baron-Reinstein with editing and additional producing by Josh Richmond. We're distributed by Lemonada Media, and you can find me at RealSamB on X and Instagram. Follow Choice Words wherever you get your podcasts or listen ad-free on Amazon Music with your Prime membership.